All right. I think we're doing it. I think we are Patreon streaming. I think. Pretty sure. Looks like it. Yeah, looks like it. All right. So, hey, patron folks. We are doing the thing. There we go. All right. Let's got the chat up here. Got the game. That's loud. I don't know if I have a memory card that has this stuff in it. Let's see if we can adjust this webcam just a little bit. Should probably turn the lights on because it's going to be dark. I think by the time we're wrapping up, it'll be pretty dark, so the light's probably a good idea. I'm going to drop the phone in the chair cushion here. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Alright, so put out a poll for what folks wanted me to do for this month's Patreon stream. It was a tie at 0 for all 4 options. Nobody voted, so nobody is that interested apparently. I picked PlayStation 2 Compilations. And we're gonna switch over to Progressive Scan because I got my Progressive Scan. Yeah, there we go. That looks better, right? Because I've got that set up here. Got a profile on my FrameMeister. That was part of why I didn't start exactly on time. I had to grab a profile for Progressive Scan because I know at least a few of the compilations we'll be checking out today do have a Progressive Scan option, including this one. And so I'm going to move the mic a little bit closer to myself and tilt the camera. I think we're good. Gonna have to wait for it to catch up. There we go. So we're in an era where the compilation has made a comeback, and I thought, because of that, it would be fun to take a look at some older compilations. Sort of the progression was we got to an era where small compilations would work because of CD media. So really the PS1 was the first era that I can think of that really saw like a good number of compilations like truly in earnest. Like there were some on the PS1 and the Genesis, like the Genesis Minis coming out that has Mega Man on it. Mega Man, the Wily Wars on it, which is a compilation of Super Mario. But those were like remakes. That wasn't just like a compilation of this game as it was. I have a Super Famicom like Nichibutsu arcade compilation, and I think those are similar. Like those are remakes. There was the Ninja Gaiden trilogy, but like it wasn't until the PlayStation era that we really got compilations that were pretty commonplace and that were doing their best to be arcade perfect or perfect recreations of the earlier games. So like Even though most of them are ports, actually, which a lot of people don't realize, right? Like, so the all the Namco museums, there were 5 that were released in the U.S. There was a bonus 1 or maybe bonus 2 that came out in Japan. That those are all ports. They're not emulated. Those are actually ported Ms. Pac-Man to the PS1. They ported Rally X to the PS1. They were just very high quality ports, and Capcom was among those, which is sort of why it's germane that we're playing now. Capcom had the Capcom Generation series. If you were watching around Halloween last year, you know that I did a whole stream of the Capcom Generation, the Ghouls and Ghosts, one of those, and those were all ports as well. And we had there were several for different arcade, Williams Arcade, Midway Arcade, Atari Arcade, which of course were all actually published by Midway because Midway owned the rights at the time to all of those. So what was it? Pre-Atari Schism. No, sorry, post-Atari Schism. Atari arcade games were owned by Midway, and now I think are mostly, if not entirely, owned by Warner, which is a funny little circle of life. So when Atari Corp and Atari Games split, the stuff that was made by Atari Games eventually fell under the purview of Midway. So Midway put out those, and originally they separated them. I've got some of the PS2 versions here of the Midway Arcade Treasures, where it's all just Williams, Atari, and Midway games are all just sort of smushed in there under the Midway umbrella. But in fact, they were a bit different. I should pick a game. I can talk about this while I play a game, right? So this is an interesting one. Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2 has a bunch of games that have not been re-released again since. And I really wish that Capcom... I think they feel like there's too much money to be made for themselves. But it would be cool if Capcom would ink a deal with Hamster, like SNK has done, like... a lot of companies, even Nintendo has done, because Hamster in their Arcade Archive series, they put stuff out so consistently. Konami, like Versus Gradius, which is such a weird oddity, is not only now available on the Switch, it's also on the PS4, which is totally bizarre. But Capcom is a little more guarded about their arcade output, and we're going to play 1941 because that's one of the games that I'm sort of referring to here in terms of like, this is not really gotten a I'm trying to think if 1941 has gotten another release since I think it's getting one. Is it on that weird joystick thing? I don't know. I think it's on the weird joystick thing. The weird $200 giant joystick thing. I believe. But I could be wrong. But yeah, so we got a lot of compilations that came in the PS1 era, and again, a lot of those were actual ports, which is sort of cool, really, that they actually ported a whole bunch of these games instead of just trying to use an emulator on the PS1 or coding it on the PS1. That I think is actually a pretty cool thing. So that was the case, with those. And then when the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era came around, um, you know, there was a lot of potential in emulators, and so companies started releasing these just huge, in some cases, collections of games um, that were running in, a sort of a. I mean, the problem, and something that you hear from a lot of people, not just me, is that a lot of these use sort of a one-size-fits-all emulator. And so sometimes the emulation isn't great, but I mean, really considering everything, you were really getting, even if they're not perfect, even if there's some flaws in the emulation, like you're really, you're getting games that it was very difficult to play, and they're not running on MAME, but definitely, the folks who are making these compilations were building on what MAME had done. And MAME existed, and if you had a good computer, you could run a lot of these games on MAME, even if you didn't have a great computer. This was before the Raspberry Pi, for sure. Now the argument, I think, probably is from a lot of people. Well, you can just get a RetroPie setup. You can just buy a Raspberry Pi for $30 or whatever, and set up RetroArch, and why would I pay $20 for a compilation? And the answer generally should be, in this day and age at least, that the emulation should be better, and that there should be more going on, right? Frank Cifaldi, I've seen him speak about it in person. I have spoken to him about it in person, and the kind of stuff that he does in his day job, not in his video game historical, history society work, but in his home, his sort of general day job stuff at Digital Eclipse. Adding to a compilation and making it something more of a, he calls them coffee table books that people play. Some of these, like this one that I'm playing right now, and we'll take a look in a second, they have some features, but the Digital Eclipse stuff is really above and beyond, and I think the value is there to check those out. Oh, that's right, this thing has an unlocks thing where, right, that's where the stuff that I'm actually talking about now, as you do, achievements basically before there was such a thing, you unlock certain stuff. So now I've unlocked the tips section. If I beat the stage 4 boss, I'll get art, and if I beat the game, I can unlock the music player. So that's kind of what's going on here, and that's a weirdly appropriately timed thing. I promise that there's no way I could have done that on purpose, even if I'd wanted to. So but the SNK compilation that Digital Eclipse was responsible for, that is, yikes, utterly ridiculous, in terms of the amount of stuff, bonus stuff, that is available there. I mean, it's just completely bonkers. It's flyers and history, and there's a narrative that you can sort of read through that tells you the story of SNK's or pre-Neo Geo existence. I mean, it's pretty nuts, the amount of detail and work that they put into those things. And these early ones, the PS2 era ones, some of them have some of that stuff, some don't. The M2 ones, of which I do have one that we will take a look at, it's all in Japanese, but you'll get the idea. The M2 ones are sort of that's a really annoying noise that those missiles make, isn't it? There is, Monster World Collection is the one, the Sega Ages one that I have on an actual PS2 disc, and we will look at that. I've got a whole stack right over there of all these different compilations that we're going to take a look at. And, M2 sort of, I think, in a lot of ways, set the template for what for the stuff that, we are seeing now from companies like Digital Eclipse, companies like Hamster in some of the cases. Those Konami collections, they leave out some stuff, but they include some really interesting stuff. Like, I've bagged on those Hamster, or those Konami collections a little bit, but not the quality of the work, because M2 puts out good work, but it's clear that Konami didn't give them maybe quite as much of a budget as I think they should have gotten, and didn't have time to. But there's these books, ebooks, sort of included in the game, which is nice on the Switch because you can just kind of sit on the couch and read it. But there's these sort of books with these interviews with all these different people who worked on all these games, and that's stuff that's context and information and really cool stuff that you don't get with just emulating a game on your computer. So the PS2, I think, was really the evolution of that in terms of how people saw those compilations. But then it swung back during the PS3 era. PS3, Xbox 360, Wii era. That was really when downloadable games came into their own, right? As probably anybody watching this knows, because you're old enough to remember all this. And it was really Nintendo who kicked it off with the Virtual Console. Rather than buy a collection full of games for $20, we'll sell you one game at a time for $5 or $8, depending on the system, which some people hated. There was it's just so weird. I talked about this a little bit with Smoke Monster when we did that stream last week, but there was a not completely unreasonable, but still maybe a little bit silly backlash to the Virtual Console and Xbox Live Arcade of people saying, why should we, you were just selling us bundles of these games for $20. For $20 I could get 20 games for $30, and now you want me to buy one old video game now you want me to buy one old video game for $5. That's a ripoff. But then, now you can find a million people on YouTube complaining that Nintendo's not offering the Virtual Console anymore and they want us to buy these compilations instead. And I can see to a certain extent, the physical version of the Secret of Mana collection just dropped last week. And people are like, oh, $30 for two Super Nintendo games and a Game Boy, and it's like, one, those are not short games. But two, Seiken Densetsu 3 is a game that people were clamoring for an official release for, well, I mean, basically since it came out, since people were aware that it existed. People were clamoring. Why didn't the US get it? Why didn't Europe get it? How come there's no English localization of Seiken Densetsu 3? And then there was that was one of the earlier ROM hack, translation patches that I remember. It was sort of a big deal in the early 2000s, I want to say. All of a sudden, people were like, "Oh man, we can finally play, the sequel to Secret of Mana. We can play Seiken Densetsu because it finally got a bunch of ROM hackers translated it, and then now that it's actually finally gotten a translation, more than 25 years, definitely more than 20 years after its release, its original release." Now everybody's like, well, I don't want to pay, $10 a piece for these 3 games, $30. Yeah. Why can't I buy it a la carte? It's funny how the view on that seems to change based on whatever is the currently available thing. I like the compilation model, honestly. I think even if you don't love all the games on them, the compilation model allows for more offbeat stuff to get released. Like, a lot of the stuff on that SNK collection, the Digital Eclipse did, I don't think anybody, I mean, maybe because Hamster has like a pretty good set of emulators, so Hamster does put out some kind of offbeat stuff, right? But, I don't really think Munchmobile, or Sasuke versus Commander, like, I don't really see those getting individual releases. That seems really unlikely to me. That anyone would demonstrate, that anyone would demonstrate or indicate, like, oh yeah, that's like, we think we could make back our investment on releasing Sasuke versus Commander for $8 on the eShop, like, but you're gonna get that in a compilation. And maybe now, I don't know, I mean, SNK put out, I want to say at least 2/3 of the Neo Geo's complete library are available on the Switch eShop now. Like, you can, I mean, they're $8 a piece, so that's like $800 to buy them all, because it's over 100 games. But if you want that, they're there, I guess. But I feel like there is definitely offbeat stuff that does not get released, and the Neo Geo is a weird thing. All right, we got some concept art. The Neo Geo is just, it's so offbeat. It's such a different piece of equipment, and there's such an interest in it, and such a rabid fan community in it, and I think there's still the association of, like, these games were available on the home system, but they're so expensive. They always were. There were some that were cheap in Japan for, like, a second. You could get a copy of Fatal Fury 2 for, like, 500 yen at one point, but, mostly you're talking about a real expensive system. So I think that there's a mystique around the Neo Geo that you can get away with releasing more stuff for it. Also, a lot of that is, like, very well-known fighting games and very well-known fighting game series. I mean, there's how many King of Fighters games for the Neo Geo, and they're all, and Fatal Fury and all the Samurai Showdowns and all that stuff. So that's a big portion of the library. There is some offbeat Neo Geo stuff that is not out on the eShop. And in fact, I remember thinking for a while that they just were never going to put 3-count bout out on the Neo Geo arcade archives, because it had been so long and so many of the games were, already out. I was like, they're just not gonna do it. Like, they just think that nobody cares about wrestling or whatever, whatever the thing is, they're just not gonna put it out. But they did. They did eventually put it out. But there's still some offbeat stuff that's in there, especially stuff that was not done by SNK, which there were not a ton of third parties who supported the Neo Geo, but there were a few. And Data East released some games, and ADK doesn't really count because they're like sort of part of they're sort of part of SNK. They were a subsidiary like pretty early on. SNK just like bought ADK and was like, yep, you're just part of the SNK family now, guys. But there were some. Sunsoft did some games for the Neo Geo. Technos did a handful of games, none of which. So Technos has a deal with Hamster because Double Dragon 2, whatever, Renegade, like those are out on Arcade Archives. But I guess they don't. I don't know what the deal is with their Neo Geo stuff because while they only did a few Neo Geo games, none of them are on Arcade Archives. Which would be like the Double Dragon fighting game, which is the best thing to come out of that movie, is the Technos developed Neo Geo Double Dragon fighting game, which was also ported to the PS1. That is the best thing to come out of the movie, because apparently it's supposed to be related to the movie, which I think is hilarious, honestly. But more importantly than that, at least for my purposes, from where I'm standing, Super Dodgeball for a Neo Geo, which is totally different than any other version of Super Dodgeball, and in fact was, I think, I'd have to double check myself, but I believe that was the last game made by Technos before they went under, and then were subsequently all their trademarks and IP were sold to Million. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, it's a Kunio game, so I'm biased, obviously, because I love Kunio games. I love Technos. But that's a thing that should be out there. And compilations, I think, allow for more offbeat stuff. Now, I think Double Dragon is a pretty easy argument to make, right? Like, that's a franchise, a series that has maybe not as much cachet as it did in, like, 1989, but people still recognize the name Double Dragon. They still make new Double Dragon games, right? So putting out the Double Dragon Neo Geo game, like, that's kind of a no-brainer. But technically, they still make Kunio games, too, but Kunio, River City, Ransom, Super Dodgeball, they don't have the same level of recognition or mainstream appeal as Double Dragon. And that's just the fact, right? But, again, the really offbeat stuff, even something like 1941, which I'm playing right now, everybody remembers 1942, everybody remembers 1943. I think only people who are big Capcom fans or big shoot-'em-up fans remember that there was, in fact, more to the 1940X series. And so 1941, the Loop Master, which is what I'm playing right now, and 1944, the War Against Destiny, which was really the last one of these, properly. And then, Psycho did the Strikers 1940, whatever it is, Strikers 1945 series, which is sort of the spiritual sequel to this, but they're not Capcom games. They're not actually part of this series, but they're sort of meant to kind of piggyback on the success of these games. But, a lot of people don't even realize that there were games after 1943, that there was a 1941 and 1944. and a 1940X, actually. Maybe 1940X is the War Against Destiny. I don't remember. But, whatever the case, this is the kind of stuff that really... Even the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle, right? Like, that was a good example. Like, in this day and age, it would be very difficult to sell people on paying, $10 for Battle Circuit as an individual purchase. Battle Circuit, which had never been released in North America in any form, not as an arcade cabinet. It was never ported to anything in any territory until it came out on the Switch and the PS4 and the Xbox One and Steam, I guess. That Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle, yeah, some of those games have been released before. Some of them are on this compilation that I'm playing right now, in fact, I think. But some of them had never had home ports, period. Let alone, with online multiplayer and, ones that are or look or feel, arcade perfect. That just was not a thing, straight up. Yikes. I'm just credit feeding at this point. But so I am happy to see a return to the compilation era. The compilation formula of releases. I think this is I don't know if I'm going to play this game all the way through. I feel like I'm fairly far. So yeah, I'm here for the return of the compilation. So that's kind of why I'm doing this today. It's just to sort of like look at some of those older compilations and kind of see how we've come in terms of what gets included in compilations now, in terms of sort of bonus features, and also to look at some games on compilations that, like, we did not. We were kind of spoiled in terms of some of the more offbeat stuff that we got home ports of that, have not, again, seen a re-release. Capcom have been pretty decent, but like I said, even a lot of the games on this compilation that I'm playing right now, it's like this or the PSP, and that's it. Those are your options. And some of those games have been released a whole bunch of times. And some of them are part of the Capcom Arcade Cabinet collection that was on the PS3 and the 360, but that hasn't come forward in any way. There we go. Beat the game. That was done by M2. Those are really good ports. But we haven't gotten them, and that's a whole bunch of Capcom's pre-CPS stuff. So before Capcom kind of codified with the Capcom Play System, which then became Capcom Play System 2, and eventually the Capcom Play System 3, which is the sort of least supported one, that's what the Capcom Arcade Cabinet compilation is, and that goes on sale like kind of frequently. Like I would, if you have a 360 or a PS3 and you don't have that compilation, I would just watch for a sale on that, your PlayStation Store sale. And I don't know if it's, I don't know if the Capcom Arcade Cabinet is backwards compatible on Xbox One, because I don't have an Xbox One. I wouldn't be surprised, which also means it probably goes on sale there too. But you can grab, they put the games out in different packages, but usually, like, if you wait for a sale, you can get like all of the game. You can get the full Monty for like, I think I paid like $8 for it or something. And it's an M2 developed thing with, you know, again, I don't think it's every, maybe it is every. If it's not every, it's a good portion of Capcom's pre-CPS1 output, arcade output. Trojan, Bionic Commando, you know, all that good stuff. So I would recommend that. But, you know, again, that stuff didn't have any of the offbeat CPS1 or CPS2 stuff. Didn't come forward in a way that beyond backwards compatibility for the Xbox One, maybe, pretty sure, not positive, don't quote me. Right. 1941 Counterattack, 1944 The Loop Master, 1940X The War Against Destiny. That's the progression there. So let's see. Since I just unlocked all the stuff for 1941, let's check it out. Let's look at it changes resolutions in the menu, so we have to deal with that. Bonus. So we hit circle on this, and we go to the bonus screen, and we can look at, you know, 1941 comes along a series of shooters that include 1942. It's weird that they say 1942, 1943 Kai, and 1943 Battle of Midway, because the actual progression is 1942, 1943, 1943 Kai is an update, like Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, I believe, in Japan. And that might be Street Fighter 2 Dash. Maybe it was Street Fighter 2 Kai, right? So that's like, it's like an upgrade. 1941 takes place during World War II. Your enemy will be the Germans. All the 1940X games are vertical shooters, blah, blah, blah. So you get a little blurb about, like, what is this game? Why should I care? And then, congratulations, you unlocked the music. Okay, so we can listen to like some remixed versions of some of the songs, and then we can like listen to the whole soundtrack. So, we can look at the art, which is probably like, okay, this is the logo. But, this is the flyer, which is cool, you know. And, this is the back of the flyer. It explains all the weapons and what happens if you pick up the Yashichi and the player 1 and player 2 ships, it looks like, and all that stuff. That's probably the interior of the flyer, I'm guessing. There's the instruction card, which usually went on the bezel of an arcade game, like on the bottom. On the bezel, you would get this instruction card. And then I think that's just the art from the flyer, or similar key art, right? Turn the menu off. So, like, you know, and again, like, this stuff isn't on the level of what you get from a Digital Eclipse, a current Digital Eclipse. Because actually, this is Digital Eclipse. If memory serves, this is actually a Digital Eclipse project, but um, you know, a modern Digital Eclipse. Which is weird because Digital Eclipse had kind of a bad rap for a while, and now they're really sort of the top of the game. Some people, have feelings about Digital Eclipse and their. They don't usually allow for square pixel sizing in some of their games, and some that bothers some people I know, but I think they're kind of the top of them, and M2 are setting the standard. Yeah, so this is interesting. This collection is interesting to me just because, again, let's go down the line. 1941, I don't believe has been re-released since this compilation because I think it's 1944, the Loop Master that's on the Big Ugly Joystick that's coming out soon or just came out or whatever. Avengers, I believe, is on the... actually, I'm almost certain. Avengers is in the Capcom Arcade Cabinet collection for PS3 and Xbox 360. Black Tiger, I think, is also on the Capcom Arcade Cabinet. Block, that's also on the PSP, but that's it for that. Captain Commando just got a present-day release on the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle. Eco Fighters, I guess. That hasn't been re-released again. This is a game that it had a dial. In this game, it's set to the right analog stick, which I'm not going to play it because I'm using my Street Fighter Nyko Saturn style controller right now. But Eco Fighters uses a dial you can kind of see in a little gameplay video. You get like a little arm, sort of like an option, and you can use a dial to aim it. So use the right analog stick in this version to do that, but that's never been re-released that I can think of. King of Dragons is on the Beat 'em Up bundle. Knights of the Round is on the Beat 'em Up bundle. Last Duel, I am almost positive has not been re-released again since this. This is like a very weird kind of footnote for Capcom. Magic Sword was re-released as the companion to Final Fight in the Final Fight Double Impact package that came out for the Xbox 360 and PS3, which is weird that Magic Sword is the game that was chosen to be the companion to Final Fight. I have no idea why that is. That's really weird, but Magic Sword, that's a decent game. Mega Twins, I don't believe has been re-released again since this compilation. Quiz and Dragons hasn't been re-released since this compilation. And again, when I say that, I mean this and the PSP. Like the PSP Capcom Arcade or Capcom Classics were sort of contemporaneous with these PS2, or like pretty shortly after. But like on any consoles that came a generation later. Sidearms, I think, is on the Capcom Arcade Cabinet. Street Fighter's in the Street Fighter 35th anniversary. Strider, I don't think Strider should be in the arcade cabinet, but I don't think it is. Yeah, Strider is like, it's been, the PS1 Classics version is available on the PS3 to download, but the actual arcade version, because the PS1 version is a port, not an emulation, and even if it was an emulation, it's probably not super accurate. It's more accurate. The port is more accurate than if it also has a really bad remix soundtrack. I talked about that in a video a million years ago. I think that was like episode 4 of Same Name Different Game was Strider. Fun fact, the only episode in which I do not physically appear. You just hear my voice. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo obviously has been re-released. Speed Rumble is in the Capcom Arcade cabinet. Three Wonders I don't think has been re-released. Tiger Road, And see, now I'm questioning myself if it's Tiger Road or Black Tiger that was in the Capcom arcade cabinet. Maybe it is both of them. Varth has not been re-released again. So there's at least, like, whatever I counted, 4 or 5 games, maybe more, out of a 20-game package that still are only available, if you don't have a MAME setup. The only way that they're commercially available, let's put it that way, they're only commercially available on a PS2 or a PSP disc. So there's value in some of these old collections. So we kind of looked over this one. I played 1941. We checked out some of the... Oh, then there's there's extras. So there's a Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo tutorial, which I believe is Seth Killian explaining some strategies in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. The Capcom Quiz is a version of Quiz and Dragons where all the questions are about Capcom, which is actually pretty cool. That's probably what I should have played on this. And that's the thing, obviously that's never been re-released either. I'm not even sure if that is on the PSP versions, if the Capcom version of Quiz and Dragons is there. But we're going to check out another compilation. This is my stack of PS2 compilations. That was an hour already? Wow, for just about 50 minutes. At Namco Museum, which has Ms. Pac-Man. I do love Ms. Pac-Man, but I don't think I'm going to play this one. If there were a lot of people, there's not a ton of people in the chat right now, I was going to ask people hey... what should I play? What should I do? But there's not really enough people. I mean, if someone wants to post in the chat and say, hey, you should play one of, this one or whatever. Mega Man X Collection, that's been superseded, obviously. Although, this one includes Mega Man Battle and Chase, which is the Mega Man Mario Kart ripoff for the PS1 that was never released in America until this compilation. And it's still not available anywhere else in English, except on this compilation. Space Invaders Anniversary, which is just 5 versions of Space Invaders. Intellivision Lives. This is one where I was saying they were putting a whole bunch of games in these. This one has over 60 games. The problem with this one is that the Intellivision controller was really weird, and a lot of the games don't exactly translate to PS2. It says all games optimized for the DualShock 2 analog controller. Not really. But that's cool to have that stuff. Gradius 3 and 4, you could argue whether 2 games counts as a compilation or not, but I think it does. Arcade Gradius 3 isn't great, and Gradius 4 is arguably the weakest game in the series. And when I say arguably, I mean I definitely think that Gradius 4 is far and away the weakest game in the series. But this was an early PS2 game. I don't even remember when I got this. Probably pretty close to when the system launched. Either that or on the cheap way after the fact, maybe, but I don't really remember. Fatal Fury Battle Archives, Volume 1. We might check this one out. The thing that's weird about these Fatal Fury Battle Archives is that the emulation is kind of just okay. Capcom Classics Volume 1, which this is really just a collection of other collections, if I'm not mistaken. This is just the Capcom Generations games from the PS1 all smashed into one PS2 disc. And this one, the PS2 version does not support progressive scan, which is kind of annoying. Only the original Xbox version does. Street Fighter Alpha Anthology includes Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix / Pocket Fighter. This one is cool. I mentioned this in the Street Fighter Alpha Same Name Different Game, but this one is cool because if you go through and unlock everything, I think you have to beat every game in it, or all 4 of the Street Fighter Alpha games that are included in it. Once you beat them all, then you get a special version of the game where you can choose any version of any fighter from all of the games and pit them against each other, similar to Street Fighter 2, Hyper Street Fighter 2. This is one we're definitely going to check out before we're done here. In fact, we're going to put this one in next. Taito Legends 2, 35 games. There's a bunch of really weird stuff in here that still, again, has not been re-released to this day. So this is actually what we're putting in next. We're going to check that out. And we're going to check this out. This is part of the M2's Sega Ages 2500 collection. This is volume 29, Monster World Complete. These were sold for 2,500 yen or 2,625 yen, including tax, I think is what this says. I got this. This was the first PS2 import I ever got. And I got it because I wanted to play Monster World 4, which of course is now much easier. But if you want to go in depth with like how deep M2 goes, and why these are sort of considered the gold standard of compilations, we will look at this because there is some stuff going on here. And then I've got all 3 of the Midway Arcade Treasures games. They updated this one later so that it would match the aesthetic of the later ones. But this is the original cover. I think I got this in my stocking for Saint Nick, the year it came out, which is 2003 according to this. So I was 19. Saint Nick, which is a Wisconsin thing. It's like it's shortly before Christmas, but on the Feast of Saint Nicholas, which is December 5th, kids just get like a stocking full of candy and like maybe a small, like a book. I used to get a lot of books. My parents gave me books, or a movie, or like a $20 compilation of old arcade games. That's Saint Nick. So it's like a mini Christmas before Christmas, but it's like a very German thing, I guess, and that was brought over to Wisconsin. And like none of the other places I've lived do people even know what I'm talking about when I mention Saint Nick. So, and then Midway Arcade Treasures 2 is maybe the better. This one has more, like Smoke Monster and I were talking, and like the 90s is that's my arcade time. So like this is a lot of 80s arcade games. Robotron and Defender and Gauntlet and Joust and Paperboy and the original Rampage and Tapper and all that stuff, and like Marble Madness, whatever. That stuff's all cool. Sinistar, Beware I Live. But this one is more in tune with like what I was used to, which is like Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Arch Rivals, that kind of stuff. Total Carnage. Yeah, these are pretty good compilations, though. Some of these got reissued in a compilation that Warner put out after they absorbed those on the PS3 and 360. But I feel like a lot of what's on these is missing again. I won't go through the whole list like we did with this Capcom one, but let's check out the Taito Arcade Legends 2. I have Taito Arcade Legends 1, but it's on the original Xbox, and it turns out I bought it from Jay Dalipopka. He was selling a bunch of his games to make some money, and I bought that without looking to see if it was backwards compatible on 360 first, and it's not. So I guess I don't feel bad if I download those games on MAME, because I have the Legends comp. We're gonna check out Legends 2. Let's do it. So based on what I just said, you might be thinking, like, Joe, why did you get Taito Legends 2 before you got Taito Legends 1? If you bought Taito Legends 1 from J. Dali Popka, which, by the way, I feel like not enough people on YouTube, especially myself included, cover this generation of games. And if you are into someone who covers this generation of games, by which I mean the 6th generation, you should subscribe to Dali Popka's channel, Viridian Flashback. Jay, the Dali Popka, does. Yeah, it's called Viridian Flashback. It's a series all about the original Xbox. That's pretty much all he covers, and you should check that out. He does good work. He was in the Ninja Gaiden episode. But anyways, why get Taito Legends 2 before Taito Legends 1? Because, as I was just talking about, Taito Legends 2 has way more offbeat stuff on it. And some of these games that you're seeing now, actually, like, you're probably already like, oh, some of these I've seen on Arcade Archives. And yeah, some of these are on because Square owns Taito. And so, some of these games are on, and so there's hope for me that some of the more offbeat stuff here will eventually come to Arcade Archives. But some of it definitely has not. And, it's a bummer. And again, this is stuff like, there's just not a lot of reason the person would pay a la carte for some of these games. Yeah, Bust a Move, it's on screen right now. That kind of thing. People will pay for that because it's a famous series. It's well known. Shoot 'em up nuts like me will pay a la carte for something like Darius Gaiden, but like, I don't see a lot of people going and paying a la carte prices for Growl. But it is my hope that the game, the number one reason that I have this compilation, that I keep this compilation in my collection, is because it has Elevator Action 2 on it. And Elevator Action 2 rules, and the only home port of it was to the Saturn, in Japan only, and it is bonkers expensive. But it's so good. So this one, original aspect ratio. Yes, we are going to go with the original aspect ratio. This, yeah, sure. I'm going to double check, but I think I need to change my FrameMeister profile too, because I don't think this game supports. Progressive. List of PlayStation 2 games with alternative display modes. These games should, like all these compilations should have the option for progressive scan because most of these games were 240p. But I don't think this one does. I think I have to... Nope. Doesn't. That is bogus. Oops. I don't want to do that. I'll be able to keep watching the chat. Alright, let's change this display mode then. the FrameMeister, one advantage that the FrameMeister has over the OSSC, which I've said this before, but like if the OSSC had been as advanced as it is now, when I got my FrameMeister, I probably would have bought an OSSC because they're cheaper, and what they do now is very impressive. At the time I bought my FrameMeister, the OSSC was not nearly as impressive as it was then. And the other thing about the FrameMeister is, straight up, it does deinterlacing. I mean, the OSSC really doesn't do deinterlacing. Like, the OSSC does not handle interlaced video very well. But the FrameMeister does. So this is a little different than what we saw before. We've got the games in chronological order by default, but we can change that to alphabetical if we want to. Sequel to Rastin. The thing that sucks about these is that there were separate compilations in Japan, and when the American publisher brought them over, they changed a bunch of the stuff. And in terms of the lineup, they changed the lineup quite a bit. And now I just hid the chat. I don't know how to get above live chat. There it is. They changed the lineup of games, and so like Rastin 3 is only on one of the Japanese compilations, which kind of sucks. Violence Fight. That's a name. That is a name for a video game right there. I really need to actually like spend some time and go through all the games on here, because I know there's a bunch of games that like a lot of people love, and I've mostly spent time with like the very well-known shoot 'em ups like Metal Black, Darius Gaiden. But there's some brawlers on here like Arabian Magic. Dungeon Magic is like an arcade beat 'em up with RPG elements, and like that is a game I need to spend more time with. Darius Gaiden is fantastic. But we're gonna do elevator action 2. Shoot, jump, game start. Sure, that works. Let's go with that. So we get, enter all the red doors. You can move the elevator by pressing up and down. You can enter the red and blue doors by pressing up. Press shoot and jump to use your weapon. We can hit additional info. And it's going to give you some tips and stuff. So, special weapons, life, bombs. And then you get the character stuff. But this is really all you get in this. Is nothing like the Capcom stuff. So I'm just gonna double check the chat on my PC, because last time my phone wasn't giving it to me. So okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna do some elevator action. Elevator Action Returns, Elevator Action 2. It's got a couple of different titles. This is extremely anime. I've talked about a bit about this lately too, but like sprite art from this era is some of my favorite. We use Edie. Some of my favorite stuff. I just love 90s sprite art, because it had advanced to such a point where people were making just really gorgeous games. Go indoor. Get a data. We got a data. I mean, I get that it's kind of gross, but like, look at how lovingly crafted that dude burning was. You know, like the stuff they were doing. You know, with traditional sprite art at this time was just too. It was too good, man. So now I've powered up my gun. You get bonus points for smacking someone down face to face. Right, so this is where, you know, one of the things I love about this game is that it starts like elevator action, right? Like you think like, you know, it's more, it's just a prettier version of the original elevator action. And then when the bad guy blows up the roof, you're suddenly like, oh wait, no, like there's more stuff going on here. You know, and there is. You can get squished by elevators, so. Cross the breeze. Right, so now this is way different than, the original elevator action is basically, oh, look at that helicopter, those scaling effects. I think, who was flying that? Did my helicopter pilot just kill himself to drop me into this airport? Whatever. Anyways, these levels now are quite a bit different than what you would have expected from the original elevator action. Alright, so I lost both my lives, and I do want to show off quite a bit of the stuff that's going on in the Sega Ages Collection. So we're going to check that out. But Taito Legends 2 has gotten a little more expensive lately. In fact, I'm going to double check just how expensive it's gotten to confirm that. But I feel like the last time I was aware, I was like, whoa, this game is not cheap anymore. Taito Legends 2. It's Taito Legends on PS2. Taito Legends is about $15. Taito Legends 2, that's not bad. Brand new for $35. It's probably not much cheaper used though. 20. Yeah, I guess it's not that bad. I thought it was up there, but it's only about $20. So, if you have a PS2, right now there is a Taito Legends 2 on eBay for $20 plus $4.53 shipping. So, that's worth it. I would say, $20 to $30 for this game. I know sometimes it's hard for people to pay that for a disc that came out years ago, but really, this one has so much weird stuff on it that I think it's worth it. I would love for Hamster to put out this game on Arcade Archives. I would buy it the day it came out if this came to Arcade Archives. This game rules, and honestly, given how much it rules, if you have a PS2 and you don't want to fiddle with emulation or making sure you have the right ROM sets and everything, it's probably worth $30 just to play this game. But then you also get Violence Fight and Growl and Rastin 2 and / Nastar Warrior. Not Rastin 3, sadly, which is kind of an interesting game. I did a Joe Never Played stream on that like a year and change ago, so if you're curious about what that game's all about, it's in the live streams playlist. But I'm going to switch over. I'm going to disappear on camera for a second. We're going to switch over to my Japanese PS2, and we're going to check out Monster Hunter Complete. All right. So I think I've explained this before to my lovely patrons, but I got a Japanese PS2 because I have a Magic Swap. A soft mod, but we're gonna go back to progressive here because this game outputs in progressive. Actually, I might switch this to the PS1 profile because, well, you'll see in a second. Alright, so I got a Japanese Slim PS2 because, one, I want to be able to the Magic Swap only works on PS2 games. I want to be able to play PS1 games, and buying a separate PS1 seemed weird and kind of silly, and they're not that expensive. And then also because I have a handful of Japanese DVDs, believe it or not, that I got when I lived in Japan that I really haven't been able to use. And some of them are just like movies that were also out in the US that I thought it would be fun to get. But the most interesting of those is I have Kill Bill Volume 1, the Japanese DVD, which has the fight with the Crazy 88s is in color instead of black and white. And I have a Tiger Mask 2. Sorry, a Tiger Mask 1, like best of official New Japan DVD that I got in 2004 when I lived in Japan. That I didn't really have a good way to watch either, so now I can watch that. I can watch both of those. I can watch. I actually bought Boondock Saints in Japan because the Japanese cut is the extended cut, but now that's available. Now it's been re-released on DVD and Blu-ray in the U.S. So, but anyways, that's why I got a Japanese PS2. So all I do is switch the plugs real quick. So, I mean, we got them all. Monster World, Monster Land, Monster Lair, Monster World 2, Monster World 3, Monster World 4. And then I've seen people say, like, oh, well, Dragon's Trap isn't on this collection. But it is. Is the thing. You just have to know how to find it. What am I doing here? So when you go into these, each game you get different options for the game. You can smooth them out, deflicker. Display mode. Oh, look at that. Look at all these display modes. Like, this is... This is what you can put in... You can have it put in fake scan lines. I hate fake scan lines, as you all know. But we go progressive. We go 240 progressive, which is basically, it's a line doubled setting. Can you see this? Yes, I can. Screen type, normal zoom. Do all that. Intensity. I don't know what intensity is. I'm not going to mess with that. Right. But when you turn this... Oops, no, we don't want to... Right, so people... Oops, no, we didn't want to do that. I'm so used to all the buttons being in different places. So what was I saying? Right, so that was the incorrect path that I was taking there to get to. Right, so Wonder Boy 3, we can play the arcade version, we can play the Genesis version. The only thing that's sort of annoying is that you have to, like, go into the... Like, you have to go into the game to be able to, like, mess with any of this stuff, right? So, that's kind of obnoxious. You know, but there's so many of these games. Now, how do I... I know that Dragon's Trap is in here because I played it. This manual's like a phone book, by the way. Like, look at how thick that is. We don't even get manuals anymore. Let alone manuals like this. Oh yeah, no, I was right. It's Monster World 2. Yeah, people are like, oh. These games will have so many different names. That it's hard to know for sure. But yeah, I was right the first time. Monster World 2. This is Dragon's Trap. So, again, people are like, oh, you can't play the Dragon's Trap. You sure can. And it's in English because the Master System version was in English. Boy, these controls are sure jacked up. Move directional button. Button 1. Square. Button 2. X. There we go. That's better. You can turn the FM sound on or off. You can turn the sprite limit on or off, so that eliminates flicker. You can overclock the CPU, so you won't get any slow down. And then the archives. The archives are great because in the archives, illustrations. The actual notes for the score, like you can do a sound test. You can change again. We already did display settings. We messed with that, but and then again, you can switch the machine. I thought you could look at the instruction manual, but maybe not. And then you can load and save a system file and all that good stuff. So, like. All those display settings, like no one else was doing that in this era, right? Like that was not a thing that other compilations made available to you, in this era. Let's check these display settings again. Yeah, so zoom is just going to stretch it. I don't love that. We're not going to do that. So this version of the game, the Master System version, I believe was only released in English-speaking territories. Well, probably Brazil. Well, definitely Brazil, but it was released as something different in Brazil. It was released as one of the Monica's Gang games in Brazil. So, with these games, you get whichever language options, all the regions of each thing. But since the Master System wasn't super popular in Japan, this game didn't come out of Master System there. So, we don't have an option to change the language. And again, this is one of those things where, this is maybe a little bit moot because the remake is, very, very close to what the game originally was, and you can play it with new art, and it looks great, and it's super fun, and, you don't... It's not what you'd call, a huge need to play this game. On a compilation like this, unless you really want to have an original sense of what the game was like. But at the time, there wasn't a great way to experience these games in the same way that there is now. Especially with, again, all those display options. Like, you were not seeing that. You weren't getting those display options. Well, I mean, I showed you. You know, the Capcom 1, Capcom Classics 2 had a progressive scan option. That was as far as we got. There was no 240. You know, if you were playing... Because these games came out when, like, you know... HDTVs were not yet the norm. And if you wanted to play in 240, like... I showed you on this one, like, you can just do that. You just go... Just go 240. Oh no, I've been cursed. So let's check out. Okay, so I played this game like a year ago, so I don't need to like play through all of the Dragon's Trap. And you had the option to suspend right where you left off. Like this is a pretty impressive little collection, and a lot of the ones that M2 did for the PS2 were like this. Like, and again, I got it mostly because I wanted to play Monster World 4, because I got this before the 360 and PS3 official translation of Monster World 4 was out. And before flashcards were a thing. Flashcards, we're spoiled by flashcards. Okay, I just want to make a point here, because Wonder Boy has some really great... The original Wonder Boy has some really great stuff going on in terms of what you can do. Okay, System 1 arcade board. You can play the Mark III version, which is basically the Coleco version, the Game Gear Japanese version, the Game Gear US and Europe version, the SG-1000 version. Oh, sorry, the Mark III is the Master System. I'm sorry, the SG-1000 is the one that's like the ColecoVision, right? So like, let's check it out. Let's go into our display settings. We've got a 240p set. Okay, great. We've got our archives, we've got our sound test, we've got our gallery. Oh, see, there we go. The gallery wasn't showing properly for the before, but we get to see what the different stuff looked like, and we get the manual. It's all in Japanese. It's an SG-1000 game, which was never released here, but you take my meaning. So this is the SG-1000 version of Wonder Boy that M2 really probably did not need to include. People were really like, yeah, man, this is what I need in my life, is to be able to play a painstakingly, accurately emulated version of Adventure Island for the ColecoVision, which is basically what this is, right? Like, that's with jerky scrolling, you know. But that's M2, man. There are no half measures for M2. If we're doing it, we're doing it. And we are doing it. We are playing Wonder Boy for the SG-1000, painstakingly accurately recreated, with save states if we want them up-res to 480p, you know, in the system, which I am then in turn up-resing through my FrameMeister to, I guess, technically 960p. You know, that's how M2 rolls. That's where we're at. This is not an exceptional port. I don't even really like this game very much to begin with. Like, Adventure Island / Wonder Boy 1 is, like, not a thing that... I mean, I thought it was fine back in the day, I guess, but, like, I would much rather play any of the Adventure Island or Wonder Boy sequels than the original Wonder Boy. And if I was going to play the original Wonder Boy, it would not be on the SG-1000 / you know, basically the ColecoVision. The SG-1000 released in Japan the same day as the Famicom, and I just feel like Sega had to be completely crestfallen when they saw the NES, because even first line black box NES games look a million times better than this. Which I guess is why they released the Mark II, which then became the Mark III, which is the Master System, which, like, from a pure power perspective, blows the doors off the NES. So, but yeah, I mean, this is really high level stuff, and I'm just gonna show the manual one more time. Like, look at how this is for a compilation, and there is, like, again, my Japanese is like fairly rusty, but like, there's like full explanations of how each of these games works in like pretty reasonable detail. And it tells you which systems are available for which versions and everything, and like, you can get the registration card. And then it tells us in the back about other Sega Ages games, Dragon Force, and the treasure box. I don't have the treasure box. I should probably get the treasure box. I mean, I have 1 million copies of Gunstar Heroes. It's my favorite Genesis game, which makes it one of my favorite games of all time. But I should probably get the treasure box. But I think that's going to do it. There hasn't been a ton of activity in the chat, by which I mean there hasn't been any activity in the chat. People have been watching, but it's all good. Thanks to anybody who tuned in. If you're checking out the archive, I appreciate that. And if you're checking out the archive and you're not a Patreon subscriber, this is one of the perks that you get for giving just $1 per video on Patreon. I think the big one that most people are coming for is the early access, or just to support the work that I'm doing, because really a lot of this stuff would not be possible without you. Buying a lot of the games and equipment would not be possible without you folks. And I'm really excited to show off some of the stuff that I've got coming this month. My N64 is out getting modded right now, so that will look a lot better, which is exciting. And I've talked about it before, but I have this arcade board right over here that is just waiting for something to be plugged into so that it can play. But if you saw my conversation with Smoke Monster, you already know that. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with me while I played some old PS2 compilations. I wish I would have got to more of them, but maybe I'll do another one of these. I might do just like a public stream of more PS2 or, GameCube, Xbox compilations, and just check out some stuff and see what people were doing with compilations back then. It's a little different than what they're doing with compilations now. I think for the worse, but it's really interesting to see what sort of brought us to where we are as far as compilations. And I think M2 really, with stuff like what we're looking at right now, I think M2 really moved the needle in a way that is super cool. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next month.